Hi, good evening. Welcome to Parama Talks. I'm Geeta, the founder of Parama Naturals, and your host this evening. Parama Talks is a series of conversations to help us make informed choices so that we can make better decisions in self care and well being. It's our endeavor to cover a wide spectrum of topics which can address physical, mental, and emotional wellness. Sometimes all it takes is one idea that can help us solve a niggling problem in our own lives or maybe unlock a hidden talent. And as life is really long, and Shakespeare said in his play, As You Like It, he said, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. And one man in his life plays many, many roles. It was as true then as it is now. In fact, probably even more so, because today we not only play different roles through the stretch of our lives and in passage of time, but at the same time, we're juggling many different roles at the same time. An individual, a daughter or a son, a brother or a sister, a friend, a parent, an aunt or an uncle, an employer, an employee, a boss, a subordinate. Some others have even more hats added. Many moms say that they are the cook, the driver, and the cleaner. And many people in their public roles of a doctor, a teacher, and probably a leader of people. But who am I amongst all these? Is there a need to typecast ourselves? It's my pleasure to introduce you all to Shumita Mahajan, a wearer of multiple hats. I first met Shumita at the Arangetram of my friend's daughter Amala, when I saw her perform and blossom under her tutelage. At her dance academy, I was quite intrigued that they take on children with special needs and they take on senior citizens as well. Soon after, I met Shumita at a corporate setting at a friend's venture where she was in charge of communication, of marketing, and also as a business head. Today, she is an entrepreneur who has started her own communications company called Word. Shumita, in fact, has been given the title of the dancing chef by none other than her own kids because she's also a food aficionado. Hi, Shumita, and welcome to this session of Parama Talks.
Hi, Geeta. Thank you for having me over. Hi there.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here.
My pleasure too.
Shumita, after seeing you wearing so many different hats, you almost seem like a maverick to me, but a smiling and a happy maverick. I've been very curious as to who the real Shumita is. Is she the dancer, the chef, the executive, or the entrepreneur? Is there a common thread in all these different avatars?
Well,
I'm going
Shumita,
to leave it all to you now to.
Shumita is what she is, Shumita. And I like the word that you used, maverick. In fact, very interestingly, earlier in my biodata, which used to be read much to my embarrassment, which used to be read out at certain events, it would begin with Shumita is a maverick of sorts. And it was something that I had written, and I used to give out to people until I had this brilliant sort of a disagreement, or you can say a discussion with one of my mentors, Dr. Ganesh Natarajan. And he said, you don't use the word maverick. And I said, why not? It is a nice word. And he was like, no, it has negative connotations. I said, no, I don't agree with that. Maverick is somebody who wears various hats. So that is how this conversation started. And he's like, no, guess what? I can give you a better word for you. I think what you really need to speak of yourself, you should understand that you are a communications person. Your expressions may be varied or different at different times, and your choice or your mode of communication may differ, but at the core you are a communications person. So please stop calling yourself a maverick. And so that's how I guess, and he literally hit the nail on its head when he said that, he suddenly articulated so well what I had been trying to, figure out for myself as to how do I introduce myself, or what do I call myself. An identity crisis of sorts, if I may say. But yes, it suddenly started making so much sense to me that he was right. Communication is what probably my core strength, and that is what I think I should be calling myself. So yes, I do wear multiple hats, but the head is that of a communication specialist, and so that is how I would want to, introduce my own self. And it took time, but finally, I guess I have discovered that golden line for myself.
Awesome. I mean, it's really nice that you could have this brainstorming session with a mentor, because
Yeah, true.
for some aspects, for many people, or rather for some people, I wouldn't say for many, because I still struggle with it. So for some people, that self-identity comes quite early and quite clearly. And for some, it can take a lifetime to discover. So glad you found yours. And with that clarity, or even without it, I guess we just need to learn how to be happy through whether it's the fog or it's the clarity in both the scenarios.
True, absolutely. We just carry on in our day-to-day lives. A lot of times we are, overcome with self-doubt. We are overcome with, we feel we have this overriding need for self-validation. I think that is what is the biggest, thing that pulls you back. It pulls you back from making your progress. And what I realized today is that all of us are speaking of success. And success, we have an image in mind, which is reaching the top of the summit. And I feel that we are all journeying towards it, and we must reach the top of the summit. But what is important is that when you reach that summit, what is it that you want to reach that summit for? Is it so that others look up to you and that you're visible to others? Or is it because you want to see the scene from up there? You want to see what lies beyond that summit and see there. So it is just a change of perspective, and age gives you that. I think age, experience, and letting yourself follow your heart, letting yourself believe yourself that you can do this, and why not do this and more, do this and more. Each time having a new goal, a new passion that you can develop, and then you reach the summit, and then you see further, there are further so many summits and so many people standing there. You start applauding for the others who have also reached their own summits, and you also look down and you pull up someone. So that is, I think, the true meaning for me when it comes to touching the summit. This is, I think, also because all along I must thank all mentors. I've been very lucky. I've been very lucky when it comes to mentors. I mentioned Ganesh has been a very, very big figure in my life. Similarly, all my past mentors, right from school, college, workplace, my various group supervisors, um, in whatever ways they have inspired me, they have egged me on, and they have given me the right perspective. Okay, you build your own perspective, yes, but if you get the right perspective shown to you by certain people who have been there and who are slightly ahead of you in their journey, it is indeed very rewarding. I would like to just, briefly speak about one anecdote which sort of has become a little life defining for me. I was just in Times of India at that time. I had just joined that group straight out of college, and I was married. I was also at the peak of my performing period in my life. So I was already juggling quite a few things in my life. At that point of time, I was, it was a very stressful time, because obviously a new job, you can understand, green behind the years, and you have to put in those extra hours and always be on time, prompt, all the things when you're learning the ropes. And I was also going to Mumbai for training for my dance training. So every weekend we used to work Saturdays. I've never had the luxury of a 5 day week. So we used to work Saturdays and it would be half day. But obviously, as half days go on Saturdays, it would be clearly 3 or 4 by the time we could really escape the office. So I would travel by train to Mumbai after, on a Saturday afternoon, reach Mumbai, reach my guru's place late night at around 10:30, post dinner. And imagine the gurus and the mentors we had then. My guru, who was clearly in her 70s in that time, already she had crossed her 70s, she would teach me from 12 in the night till 4 in the morning. Never one to ever say, oh my God, it's my time to rest. She was all enthused. And I used to wonder, my God, will I ever have the kind of stamina and the kind of, attachment that she had with her art form, her commitment to it. She said, you can come so many miles to meet me and to learn the art form.
Yeah. So to cut a long story short, I would return, on Sunday night, and it would be late, and obviously I would be very deadbeat and tired. So invariably Monday mornings, I would, landing in late to office, and my group heads, would really cover me. To be very fair to them, they used to take a lot of pride in all my, achievements, and they would cover up for me and, literally keep me safe from the boss's ire. But obviously, it was becoming a little too much. I was taking too much them for granted. And one day, my group head got pulled up because of my delay, because I did not reach in time, and he was very upset about it. And he just told me, he said, you know what, and he sort of vented on me. Then he felt bad because he had vented, so he took me aside and he said, Shumita, I mean, all said and done, you need to really grow up now, become a little more serious, because honestly, ye dance kitne din chalega yaar. So I mean, rightly so, he was quite right in his own way, because I think what the biggest lesson I learned that day was that no matter what work you take up or the commitments that you take up, you cannot let the compartments lose, because you cannot give excuses for not doing your bit, for not keeping your end of the bargain. No matter what a storm you've been through, you jolly well come back, turn up in the morning at the appointed hour, if possible even before, do the task at hand, and move on. Okay, I cannot keep on start thinking, oh, I'm a star dancer. Why don't they understand this? Why can't you give me a little bit of a leeway? Well, nobody's asked you to come and work in that case. I was working because I was also extremely fond of that sector of journalism, of writing, and get that high of getting your byline, in the ways. So that was a learning for me. And I said, it is not correct that someone else has to bear the brunt of my ambitions. And so that was a learning point for me. And also what he said, it sort of stung me a bit when he said, "Ab to 26 saal ki ho gayi ho tum, you can't sit dancing all your life." Please accept that, you cannot really think of it growing into a career now. So it was very, it sort of set me into a little bit of a introspection mode. But here I am, 2.5 decades later, where I think I could do it, because at that time I always was like, why can I not do everything? Of course I can do everything. Many lessons learned, you can do everything, but you have to be willing to pay the price for it. You cannot say that everything will come to you on a platter. Everyone has to work hard, no matter what it is for. So if you can expand your, your zone and give your commitment to everything that you wish to take up, you can do it. And as I said, from each summit, you look forward to the next summit, but you have to climb down and climb up again. So, you cannot fly from one summit to the other. So that is something that I think I learned very early in life, thanks to this episode. And and I've been lucky, as I said, that I've been able to maintain all my roles simultaneously. without really slipping up here and there. And I've kept them all very, in tight compartments. I don't, as we always say, right? You don't bring work home. Do not bring all the tensions of home to the workplace. It is like a switch on and a switch off button that I have, which I think I've mastered pretty well by now. That if I am sitting down to finish a project and send it, boss, everybody stay out of my zone, because I can be some temperamental person. My specs are on and I'm at it. And the very next instant, I will get into the kitchen and whip up a meal. And then, of course, I have my, dance practices, which I'll have to look into. So yes, these are choices you make. But once you've made that choice, you have to go the full hog to give it what it needs. Even if it means sleeping only 4 hours at night, that's okay.
Wow, that's a tough one to actually compartmentalize, because so often it happens that I carry my work tensions home, and especially when it comes to these technology related things, I'm constantly asking my kids, hey, how do you solve this? And then, Mama, please, no more of this. So I'm also learning how to compartmentalize, especially with this specific thing. Otherwise, I think I was able to. But really interesting how you're able to find that balance. But how do you think that, so while you've been able to compartmentalize, but there are still aspects which actually run like a common thread, like you said, the communication thread. So how do you dovetail that aspect into these different roles? And why do you think that communication is such an important thread, or it's such an important piece of your personal journey, and especially a personal wellness journey, I would say, because the wellness is all about this connective continuum.
Sure. So see, communication, I think, someone has said it, I don't remember who, but the essence of communication is intention. And I believe that, your mode or your choice of expression could be anything, could be different. More often than not, people, confuse, or rather they, bracket communication as just language. So if I have to take that analogy and look at communication as language, then every form of expression is a language of its own. So when we say communication could be non-verbal, it could be verbal, it could be internal, it could be external. So there are so many subsets of communication. Similarly, whether your form of expression is to paint, you ask an artist will say they use it, their painting talks. It has to communicate with people. It has to reach out, correct? Similarly, it is with food. I mean, when your grandparents, your grandmom, your mom, who, we keep speaking about our grandmoms and moms' cookings. Why? Because they would speak to our hearts. They would speak to us. The food they made for us, even if it was dal, chawal, we call it comfort food. For what reason? Is because we understand that language. Your own homemade food is something closest to you because you know that language. You understand the grammar of that language. Similarly, it is with whether you are a singer. Singers have their own code of expression. And so it is with writers. So it is with dancers, and so it is with chefs, so it is with a corporate personnel. If you're in the business room, you're using the business lingo, you're making a PowerPoint presentation, you have to use the PowerPoint tools. Whatever be your form of expression, communication is at its essence, and the essence of communication is your intention. So just like, in a normal communication process, we say the sender receiver, and just now we had technology playing truant. So we had a sort of a breach of communication there, correct? Similarly, if there is, there is a disharmony between the speaker and the receiver, then there is a miscommunication or a break in communication. But if your intentions are clear, and if it's focused, and if you understand that at the end of it, what you're trying to present is something out of love and honesty, there is always a resonance. There is always a resonance in the audience or in the receiver. So that, I think, is how everything dovetails into one another. And if I look at communication as an analogy in life, we are constantly expressing every day. From the time we wake up, we are expressing, and we are all social animals, aren't we? So we have to understand that, do we speak dog? Of course we speak dog. When you're playing with animals, there is a connect. You don't have to go start barking to sort of reach out to them. But if you are at the core of whatever you are trying to express is an honest viewpoint or an honest expression of self, there is no way that it will not be received well. And even if it is judged, so what? That is the other person's mode of expression. So be it. So I think that is how I feel that my writing or my dance or my, my doling out all those recipes and dishes is just learning of new codes and languages of my form, things which I love, which bring out my character. So my whole thing is that tomorrow I wouldn't want somebody to just, okay, your talk really inspired me, so I want to take up dancing. Well, that may not work. That may not work. You're welcome to come and learn dance because just for the love of that art form, that's fine. But in the process, you may discover that the literature is becoming your, sort of your mantra. So everything is about a self-discovery of what really works for you. What are your buttons? And I think that is more important than finding what works for someone else. That is, the next step. As a help, you could probably do that. But first, you need to find yourself and find what works for you. So if something is not working for you, openly admit that, okay, while I feel that this is a great thing, it is not for me. And so if that comes across, even when we are in our class, what we do is when there is a new admission, firstly, I dissuade people from joining dance classes, mainly because it's always in a fit of emotion that you see a good performance and then you suddenly want to become a Vaijayantimala. And you enroll for a dance class, little realizing that whether you would really enjoy it. Secondly, then the pressure is put onto the teachers as, when will I learn that item? When will I go on stage and start performing? When will I do my Arangetram? So all these pressure points start. So right at the beginning, it is important that you lay out everything and give them choices. You say, why don't you go and check that out? Why don't you go and check Kathak? Why don't you go and check Odissi? Why Bharatnatyam? Why only Bharatnatyam? Because I live close to your house. So that cannot be the reason why you're learning or you come to learn from me. And we do keep giving feedback that, this child, while she's learning her dance, she's doing it sincerely. She's extremely good in speaking. So why don't you think of getting her to start comparing her show? She might be very good in music for all you know, and that may be her path. So, she should take up music classes, and that is where probably she'll find herself more. That, I think, is what is important. And I keep doing that SWOT analysis on and off as to what are my energy leaks at this stage of life. And, this is not what I want. So stop it. Drop it. It's okay. There is no shame in accepting that you were barking up the wrong tree and, stopping it right. It's important that you realize that, and wake up and move on. Okay, nothing goes waste. Nothing goes waste. But don't waste your time once you have realized. Then hanging on because somebody will feel bad or what will my chachi say? She was the one who had a lot of hopes from me, or to say, but I told everybody that I'm learning dance. What will people say that I'm leaving things up? It's okay. You have nothing to prove to anyone. So yeah, that's how things move from one to the other.
Wow, that's interesting because it's always a challenge, no? You don't, especially when you look at starting early in life, let's say, and you started learning Bharatnatyam, I think around the age of 4 is when you were telling me about it.
Yeah.
At that age, you don't really know that this is going to be my, my calling in life for the rest of my life. So you will end up experimenting, you will end up doing things. But more importantly, in this journey, as you take on students, how do you enable these aspects to come out from them? How do you bring these aspects out in them, to help them discover what is the path that they really want to do?
Yeah, so initially when so it's been 30 years since I set up Sadhana Nrityalaya in 1991. So it's been quite a journey. And as I always say that I have evolved thanks to my students. When we start off, I was a young something, and performing myself very, very heavily. So automatically teaching was really, it was just something that just happened in life. I did not start off thinking that it will become so big. And honestly, I did not enjoy teaching initially. I used to find it very irritating, very boring, because, kisi ko tayyate sikhao to, the back is coming up, the perfect posture it takes. And at that time, you start appreciating all your mentors even more. And you realize you were also once upon a time exactly in this state. But the onus of that mentoring, the importance of mentoring came on very strongly on me. And I'm like, I cannot be misguiding an entire generation, because I am like nothing but a link of the ancient things which have been passed on to me with so much care, with so much love and so much compassion by my gurus. And here I am passing it on to them. Will I water it down? Am I watering it down? Am I giving it in a negative way? Am I marring somebody for life? Because nothing hurts a person more than showing disbelief in that person. So I think that is something my students have defined, that teacher in me. And I give the credit completely to the students, and also to the initial set of parents who reposed faith in me, who did not even blink an eye whenever I was going wrong. And in retrospect, when I look back, there's so many mistakes that I've made, but they have been very compassionate, and they have been saying, it's okay, we let you have a free field, please do what you want with our daughters. And it was I'm grateful that they let me experiment, they let me grow my way. And of course, each of them are success stories, each of them, honestly. But something which is very close to my heart, and which I always like to talk about, is this very special child of mine, Prerna Sahane. She's hearing impaired, and she came to me when she was just 7 years old. At that time, I didn't even know what hearing impaired really entailed. I just thought, sign language karungi, usko sikha dungi, ho jayega. And honestly, at the back of my mind, I felt, I felt I will look good when I teach them. Okay, I'm doing my bit for society. And I said, at some point, she will get bored or tired, and she will quit and go. Now, this is where I'm talking of intention. See, my intention was so wrong. And I did not even give that space to the other person, that what is her aspiration, and it was her intention that won. She was decided that she wants to dance. More than her parents. Her parents were absolutely short of insulting them. I think I have yelled and screamed and thrown tantrums, everything I've done. And I actually thought, tomorrow she will not turn up. And I was actually waiting for her to drop out, and she would be there at my doorstep. So she taught me persistence. And then when she started doing something, a very complex tals, without me even teaching her, I started feeling very small. I said, here is her, who, in spite of her so-called disability, was rising above it and giving her all. And here is me, who is keeping it away from her. So I think that was like a eureka moment for me. And, I said, no, I can't be doing this. I can't be calling myself a guru. I felt like an imposter. I am not a guru. And I still say that I am not a guru, because a guru is a evolved person who has reached enlightenment. I'm not. I'm also on my journey. But yes, I trained her, and I put in also my effort, my intentions, I changed. And that child, in 2015, she received the national award. And I was invited to the president's house, and it was such an honor. So that is what, success comes to those who finally put in their intentions and put their all behind those intentions. The child is a performing artist, is performing all over. She has got all the possible awards possible, here. And I guess even if one life is changed, even if one life is feeling, successful, because and they are always heaping praises on me, which I used to be very embarrassed until now. Now I have sort of, it doesn't prick me anymore, because yes, I was wrong initially, but I mended my ways. And isn't that also a part of teaching? It's also about the teacher learning how to be a teacher. We are not born with all these knowledge. We are not born with the tools of becoming a good teacher or a mentor. So that period also changed me. And, I looked into best practices of what other people are doing. And the scene was pretty dismal, I must say, because, in the Indian classical dance styles, we are always sitting in ivory towers. Gurus, they're like islands of their own. And I realized that when you're an island, you're cut off, right? So that is where you've broken your mode of communication. So how can you communicate to the student or to the audience? If you cannot communicate to your students, how do you think you're going to communicate on stage to the audience? And so my gurus used to always tell me, the stage is the biggest equalizer. It is transparent. What you are is seen. It doesn't matter how fat, how thin, how dark, how tall you are, what color costume you're wearing, how much does your jewelry cost. It doesn't matter, because what the audience sees is you, your honesty and your intention. So very important to get that right. So now this is also what communication teaches you. Communication says when you're speaking something, writing something, or reaching out, you have to believe in it first, for the world to believe in it. So believe in whatever you're speaking, reading, writing, cooking, dancing, whatever. Believe in it first. Live it. And then, then it is no longer a communication. It is just free flow.
You were mentioning something about, that communication with your internal self and the communication with the outside. And on that, I think that we have a question from the participants, from Ashok Korwar for you. He says, I'm sure you don't think about anything when you dance, but do you find that you think better after you dance?
Okay, interesting question. Well, thinking is something which is before, after, all through. When you're on stage, those aha moments where what we call as rasa anubhava, which is experiencing of ecstasy, the rasa, the juice, the experience of the essence of whatever is happening. There is no one word in English which can translate that. Now, when that is happening, not every time are you in communion with rasanubhav, not every time. Okay, we are at the end of the day, when we are performing, a lot of time it's play acting. It is play acting. But there are moments, there are some aha moments, which come across. And that is when you have experienced rasanubhava. And invariably, in my experience, I have seen people come up and say at such times, today, it was something exceptional. I felt it. I felt God's presence, or, whatever. It means different things to different people. Some people, come and say, I cried. Why did you make me cry so much? Whereas what I did was not something which had pathos at all. It was probably vatsalya, motherly love. But it ignited pathos in somebody. So point is that I cannot decide. So thinking does not become a part when on stage. But yes, when I'm creating something, I definitely have to think a lot as to how I'm going to present this, what I'm going to present in it. And afterwards, it is more of introspection. After the performance, it is more about, did I really, make clear, did I really do it with clear intentions? Because we are human beings, we are definitely, our base is vanity. And that always supersedes, always, always before, when you're on stage, the first thought that every dancer will think of, am I looking fine? Now, am I looking fine is something which is, it's natural, it comes on. But afterwards is when I definitely have to think that, did I have to look nice, or did I have to look fit for the role? Now, if a Shurpanakha I'm doing, and if I'm thinking, am I looking nice? I'm not Shurpanakha, I'm becoming Shumita, trying to play act Shurpanakha, right? So yes, thought comes after. Thought is more planned, right? It is not natural. It is something which you give an afterthought to. So an afterthought is for future references. You make those notes that, okay, this color, or probably is not suiting. Next time we should rethink the color. You think of the decor, you think of presentation modes, you also think of the choreography, but you don't think of because you cannot plan the emotions in that sense. So here I would like to just say that, again, dance, how it dovetails into my life is, in dance we have this whole concept of there's this shlok of Natyakrama, which says, Jato hasta tato drishti, Jato drishti tato manaha, Jato manaha tatoha bhava, Jato bhava tato rasa. Meaning, where your hand goes, your eyes follow. Where your eyes follow, your mind goes. Where your mind goes, your emotions, bloom out, or they come out in full bloom. And when the bhavas, when the emotions come out, that is when rasanubhav is experienced by you as well as the observer. Similarly, in life, the hand represents all your actions. Whatever action, whatever task you have decided to take up, you have committed yourself to, make sure your eye is on it, your focus. You focus on the task at hand. When you're focusing on the task at hand, do it with your full heart, with your full mind. Manaha is again in that space between heart, mind, we don't know what it is. So manaha, your man has to be completely involved in that activity. And thus, all your expressions, come out in unrestrained. Don't restrain those expressions which come out clearly at that point of time. And only then will you bear, you will relish the fruit, the fruit, the outcome of that action. Then you really feel it. So I think in this sense, dance really teaches me and everyone else on how to understand the essence of life. So that is where dance comes in so importantly in everything that you do. In everything that you do, it sets a pace for you. It makes you look within. It makes you look at the path. It makes you an observer at times. It makes you the center of activity at times. So it is a meditation in motion. As I always keep saying, it is a meditation in motion where you're connecting internally to yourself and externally with others. So it is that communion. And I hope I've been able to answer that question. That thought comes later, it's planned. But stage is, completely natural. And what you are is there, out there for everyone to see.
So at least my inference from what you said is that because you are in a meditative state during your dance, obviously the thinking is a lot clearer post the dance, because at least I've experienced this in myself, that if I've done my meditation, I've done my yoga, the day spans out very clearly. And the days sometimes that I do miss it, there is remnant clarity from other days maybe, but I'm not as, I would say, not as much in communion or not as much in the moment, not as calm or composed or have clarity in thinking in myself. I mean, this is my observation myself. And if you are saying dance for you is meditative, I'm extrapolating that would be a similar thing in your case too.
True. Absolutely. Yes.
Well, it's been a wonderful, we're running out of, we've exceeded the time, and I kind of consciously let it pass because we had a bit of a technical snag. But it's been a wonderful conversation with you, Shumita, to see how your role evolved from the young dancer and the young journalist into being a teacher, a mentor, a guru, a coach, and a professional. And of course, I don't know how you still manage to balance that, because as life trudges on, we lose focus, we lose interest, we have many more duties, roles, responsibilities, and it's been wonderful how you've been able to traverse this journey through the different ages. And
thank you.
And wonderful to see how you do what you love and love what you do.
Absolutely.
And through that journey of finding this wellness in your body, mind, and soul, hopefully this is what they call as self-actualization in Maslow's hierarchy level. So when you were talking about reaching the summit, probably it is that. And
it is that.
And at every stage, you are feeling fulfilled, whether it's about looking up or looking down, and you're doing combination of both, because you're obviously not at the peak of self-actualization at midlife. You're probably, continuing on this path. But
so,
it's wonderful
I know
to unlock these treasures for others.
I'm taking a little more.
Please do.
But I really think that I have a seniors batch, which like I have women, and in fact I have grandmothers now, 69 plus, who are dancing, and for the last 3 years they have been dancing, learning to dance. And we are even talking about Ranga Pravesham for my 69-year-old. She is the most enthusiastic, and she was like, all through I love dancing, but ghar ke kaam mein got so busy, and never really got the chance to move out and learn it. Can I do it? I said, of course. If you want to do it, you can do it. And it's so enriching to teach them, because there's nothing, they are so way ahead of me when it comes to experience. So when I'm teaching Vatsalya Bhav, what I'm teaching, it comes naturally to them, because they have read, children, grandchildren, now even great grandchildren probably. So Vatsalya Bhav, and they are doing Thumaka Chalata Ramachandra in such a beautiful manner that I am, surprised. So there is really no age, no specific time area that now you've lived your time, so this is over. No. And today, in fact, one 81-year-old youngster who came to my place, Janaki Bhattacharya, I must talk about her. She just said that, why should you be practicing death? Every day you must live life to the fullest. Let's not practice death, because death needs no practice. I really love that sentence. So these are little tidbits that we keep gathering from everyone, all the seniors and all the mentors who are out there. So on that note, anybody, who wishes to please find your mode of expression and go for it. There is never an age limit or an expiry date, ever.
Yeah, thanks so much. I mean, your perspectives and especially some of your initial fears and self-doubts and, things which we all go through, and how you also overcame them. And the self-doubt it's like a continuous motion machine, Sometimes you have a little self-doubt about something else, and the next thing, you overcome that, but now there's the next hurdle,
these self-doubts are like the Rakshasas, which you have to constantly battle. That is why we say the Ramayana is constantly going on. We are the Ram, we are the Ravan. It's all in the play in the mind. So that's here.
Yes, absolutely. This whole search for identity, and sometimes in this search for identity, we forget to actually live in the moment, not realizing, and probably dance gives you some of that If you're not in the moment and you're thinking about something else, at that point, if you have self-doubt, am I a good communicator? Have I cooked my meal properly?
Absolutely.
You'll go berserk. You won't be able to do your, follow the thaya thay also at that point in time.
True.
So I guess. So I think we'll call this an evening. Thanks for a lovely session, Shmita.
Sorry for over.
No. And I love the shloka because it's all about, even in different things, when you talk about the action, the thoughts, the deeds, and the actions, it's all about that you can't stop at just one. I mean, everything has to culminate for it to lead to fruition outside. And as a small token of appreciation from our side, there is a little gift hamper of Parama Naturals daily essentials for skincare and wellness. And each of our products, like you, perform multiple roles at all in one. Okay.
I can vouch for that. I've been using one product of yours and it's amazing. It's already showing results. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this.
Wow. And thanks to all the participants for attending the session, for bearing with the technical snags, for being proactive and sending in your questions and comments. And do share with us some of your interesting nuggets and learnings from your journeys, and also maybe some other topics that might be of interest for us to continue in this series. And there's a small little announcement for our next session of Parama Talks on Thursday, 26th August at 6:30 p.m. by Dr. Ramya Ranganathan, who's another multifaceted, interesting person, who's a faculty member of IIM Bangalore, a life and executive coach, a yoga, Reiki, and meditation teacher, and an entrepreneur too. And her topic will be I Am Enough, and how to find joy and meaning in work and life. So we look forward to you joining us for that session. Do sign up for the newsletter on our website, paramanaturals.com, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay tuned. We promise not to spam you, and we look forward to you joining us. Have a lovely day, and bye.